I think one of the most challenging aspects of the switch to remote learning has been finding a dedicated study space. It seems like every student I speak with complains about not having a space where they can feel productive, as if they can learn and get things done. So in this video, we'll talk about how you can use your 5 senses to create the ideal study space for you. And be sure to stick around to the end of this video and we cover a few creative solutions for common barriers to a study space, like frequent interruptions from friends and family, or not even having a space of your own. So if that sounds good to you, then let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Edward. I'm a college success coach who shares all the strategies you need to reach your academic goals, so you can graduate ready to change your world. If you haven't done so, then definitely consider subscribing to this channel for weekly tips you can use to get the most out of your college experience. Before we get into how you can use your 5 senses to create the ideal study space, let's take a step back and consider the environments in which you feel the most productive. When we're on campus, do you find it easiest to study in a quiet library somewhere in the corner by yourself? Or like me, are you someone who finds it easier to focus in a really energetic environment like a coffee shop? Now that you have the visual of the spaces in which you feel most comfortable studying, it's going to be our job to translate those things into your home environment. So first up, let's talk about touch. And in this case, I'm using touch to mean things like furniture and having physical materials available to you. Up to this point, where have you been studying? If you answer with in your bed, then please stop right there. Do not study in your bed anymore. That's because our brains are primed to associate certain locations with certain activities. Since you're most likely to be sleeping in your bed, then chances are if you're studying there, you're going to find yourself nodding off more frequently. So instead, we're going to want to find something like a desk space that you can sit at. Now, if you don't have a desk handy, then remember, stay till the end of the video and we come up with a few creative solutions. But in the meantime, try to brainstorm places that you can sit upright. Next up for touch, I want to talk about physical materials. You are on a screen enough throughout your day. And if you're not on your computer in class, then chances are you're on your phone or your tablet or TV. Use studying as a refreshing break for your eyes to get away from a screen and start focusing on physical materials again, like books and paper. By doing so, you'll increase your endurance during study sessions, and avoid things like eye strain and headaches that we commonly associate with sitting in front of a screen all day. Now, the last component of touch is a little non-traditional, but I really want you to think about the clothes that you wear to study. One of the biggest benefits of remote learning is the ability to stay in our pajamas all day. But really think about, do you feel most productive in your pajamas? Or are you like the other half of the population who really needs to get dressed if they're going to get something done? In addition to productivity, consider the temperature of your room and the effect that the clothes you choose will have on how comfortable you are. For example, if your space runs cold, then you may find it more convenient to just wear your pajamas for your study session. In this case, do whatever works better for you. Now let's move on to sight. Think about the lighting in your room. Is it conducive to your favorite study environments? Are you somebody who prefers things to be a little bit dim? Or do you prefer something nice and bright? If you prefer something brighter, then bring in as many lamps as possible or sit by a window. And conversely, if you prefer a dim study environment, then dim the lights and close the shades. Something important to consider though is that most people find light to be energizing. This goes back to what I mentioned about your brain being primed to do certain activities at certain times. Most of us sleep at night and are awake during the day, and so our brain follows those same patterns when we're studying. If it's too dim, then you run the risk of your brain thinking it's time to relax or go to sleep. Moving on with sight, let's talk about the visuals around you. What's on your walls? Really lean into the visuals that you find inspiring and motivating, and try to recreate those at home. Whether that means writing out your goals on sticky notes and putting them just above your workspace so that every time you look up you're reminded of why you're doing the hard work you're doing, or if that means having a plant or a picture on your desk so that it puts a smile on your face. If you find the visuals around your room to be a little distracting, then move them away from your study space. Now, I'm not saying you need to go full-on meaningless void like you see behind me, but as a general rule, you'll want to keep your space uncluttered and light to help boost your mood and keep you focused. Now let's move on to sound, which many students tell me is the most important factor in an ideal study space for them. There are 2 types of people in this world. People who like a noisy environment to study and people who need it absolutely silent to study. Personally, I'm team music all the way. I found lo-fi beats help engage my auditory channel so that I'm not as easily distracted. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum, which needs absolute silence to focus. If that's you, then considering we're not going back to campus anytime soon, you may want to consider investing in some noise-canceling headphones, or at the very least, some inexpensive earplugs. And then there's what I like to call the middle ground, people who use ambient noise to fill up that auditory channel. It's not exactly silent, but there's also no recognizable beat. Regardless of which you choose, make sure you're making that decision because you feel it helps you focus. Don't have it silent because you think studying should be silent, and don't play music because you think you should play music when you study. Experiment, try out new things, and see what works best for you. If you haven't experimented with lo-fi or ambient noise, then I'll link a couple channels below to check out. Fourth on our list, let's talk about smell. For me, there is no better smell than a nice big pot of fresh coffee. It's one of the many reasons I love studying in coffee shops. But considering that's not an option right now, whenever I have an intense work or study session ahead of me, I'm always sure to have a cup of coffee right beside me. Oftentimes I don't even drink it all, but the smell alone is enough to help me feel more productive and puts me right back into my happy place in a coffee shop. Ask yourself, what smells do that for you? Is it candles? Diffusing oils? Or if you prefer to study in a library, then put a stack of books on your desk so you can smell the paper. And the older those books, the better. If you're a library studier, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. All this talk of coffee has me thinking of our last sense, taste. Are you a snacker while studying? There's actually some research to show that having snacks at your side while studying is beneficial to our learning process. Of course, the types of snacks we choose matter. You really want to stick with light, energizing snacks, things like water, nuts, and fruit. And you'll want to avoid fatty and overly greasy foods that can bog you down and leave you feeling ready for a nap. Having snacks at your study space can actually help you increase the length of your study sessions. When you start to feel a little bit antsy or overworked, then stand up, take a quick stretch, have a drink of water and a few bites to eat, and you're back ready to hit the books again. So let's chat about coffee and other caffeinated drinks for a second. Caffeine is actually quite a controversial subject when it comes to studying. In fact, the research shows that after the initial spike in energy we get from caffeinated drinks, we're in for a crash. So if you do like to study with a cup of caffeine nearby, then definitely consume it in moderation. Cheers. Now that we've talked about using your five senses to create the ideal study space for you, I do want to talk about a couple of concerns that students express when trying to find this study space. Probably the most common one that I hear is that students don't have a desk to sit at while studying. We now know we don't want to study in our beds because it sends signals to our brain that it's time to relax or to sleep. So what can we do if we don't have a desk? Well, it's time to get a little creative. I think the most obvious solution here is to sit at your dining table. Dining tables are really just big desks. But your dining room table may be in a very noisy part of your house, so you're trying to avoid it. Well, have you considered using a bookcase as a standing desk? Place your laptop at an appropriate height for your arms to reach the keyboard, and voila, instant standing desk. You may even want to consider bringing in some of those sensory considerations we talked about earlier and decorate your bookcase or bring in nice smelling things like candles to make the space feel more productive for you. Don't have a bookcase nearby or a standing desk not exactly what you're looking for? Really, what is a desk? It's a flat surface on which you can place stuff with legs to hold it up at the right height for your chair. Just thinking out loud, that's basically an ironing board set to its lowest setting. Or how about a stack of boxes? It may look a little funny now, but you'll be the one laughing when you get the grade you actually want in your classes. The next most common barrier I hear to having a productive study space is not having a space of your own. Now that may be because you share a room with someone or because you prefer a quiet study environment, but there are no quiet spaces in your house. I want you to think about the underutilized spaces in your home. For many of us, there are spaces in our house that no one ever goes into. This may be a space like a formal living or dining room that no one's allowed to touch, or even your garage, which is likely the biggest room in your home and yet no one ever goes into it. Think about how you can leverage those spaces and create a study space for you. So since we're friends now, I'll let you in on a little secret. But first let me ask you, which room in my house do you think I'm in? My dining room? No. My bedroom? No. My dedicated office? I wish I had one of those, but no. You may be surprised to learn that I'm filming this video from the closet underneath my stairs. Let me show you. There's the closet rail. Not kidding. Still waiting on that acceptance letter from Hogwarts. You see, when I transitioned to remote work and learning, I knew I needed a dedicated space to get things done. So I utilized a room in my house that was just sitting there taking up space and made it work for me. And the final most common barrier I hear for students as to why they can't study at home is because of frequent interruptions from family and friends. For a lot of us, it's impossible to sit and focus for more than 10 minutes without someone barging into our room asking us to do something or asking us where something is. Now, if you can relate, I have two strategies you can use to try to mitigate some of those interruptions. The first strategy we can use is bartering with someone, something that you have in exchange for peace and quiet. For example, let's say you have a sibling who's constantly barging into your room or into your shared space. Would they consider borrowing your game system for 2 hours in exchange for leaving you alone? Or can you exchange 2 hours of quiet time? For example, you give me the room from 4 to 6 so I can study, and I'll give you the room from 10 to 12 so you can FaceTime your boyfriend. This trading of time for time leads me to my second strategy, which is creating a study schedule and sharing it with the people around you. Let them know why these study sessions matter. Explain to them what you'll be doing. From 4 to 6, I'm preparing for my history exam. And this history exam is really important because I'm not doing so well in that class, and so I have to get a good grade on this final. And if I don't pass this class, then I have to retake it, which may delay my graduation. So can you help me pass by identifying 5 or 6 hours this week that I can use to study and be left completely alone? The conversation can be a little tough to bring up, but I assure you that communication is key. By having these tough conversations, you're not only ensuring that you'll perform better on your exams, but you're also helping to include your family and friends in your academic life, which is definitely important. And those are some of my best strategies for finding the ideal study space for you. We talked about how you can use your 5 senses to design a study space that works for you and your lifestyle, and also creative solutions to 3 common barriers that students experience when trying to find these study spaces. If you found this video helpful, then please like it, and let me know down in the comments an underutilized space in your home that you can start using to study. Good luck on finals, and I'll see you next time.